Hello and welcome to your lecture for Chapter 11 for your sports marketing class. Chapter 11 is jumping into the topic of public relations. So just a few things that we're going to cover and really go into in depth in this particular chapter covers concepts related to understanding what public relations is and its role in product positioning as well as its place in the marketing mix, which is something that you've been reading about prior to this chapter. We're also going to understand and recognize the importance of community relations and how that can be an effective marketing effort. And then we're also going to go a little bit deeper into the role, the scope, as well as the influence of media and how it can be used in conjunction with the public and community relations, maybe to build a positive product image or possibly to alter perceptions in the instance that something has created poor public relations. So when we talk about public relations, we have this notion that it's really kind of this essential role in promoting the image and the ideas of an organization. And it's usually referred to as PR. And it's a tool that's used to amplify a good marketing communications plan. In today's instant information society, media and public opinion continue to really dominate how we perceive the world around us, including the sports industry. And public relations affects a wide variety of constituents in the marketplace, including media as well as the public. However, in sport, PR applications can be used to benefit business initiatives, create marketing opportunities, drive television tune-in, as well as sell tickets and merchandise and a whole bunch of different things. So PR can be an effective mechanism to position a sport organization or even an athlete in both the local community and the larger sports landscape. And so effective public relations efforts and personnel who can proactively promote positive storylines, activities, as well as any sort of initiatives have really kind of become critical in the sports setting. So these PR practitioners also have to function in times of crisis to help provide sort of this reputation management as well as what we might consider damage control. And the PR department is the conduit through which many communication functions flow, including serving as kind of the chief liaison with the media. And the modern 24/7 news cycle moves with this rapid speed and high intensity. And the volume of coverage, the rapid rate of reporting, as well as sort of immediacy of information make it important for PR professionals to take advantage of opportunities that will allow their athletes, as well as organizations, to break through and make a meaningful and positive impact. So the PR personnel must be strong. They must be passionate advocates on behalf of their athletes in organizations or brands while promoting them, but they also must be able to respond quickly to negative stories or maybe incorrect reporting and crisis. So let's go ahead and begin then. Now that you've got a little bit of an introduction, let's define public relations. What is it? Your textbook defines it as an interactive marketing communications strategy. It seeks to create a variety of media designed to convey the organizational philosophies, goals, and objectives. Stay with me, it's kind of a long definition. And then who is the audience? This identified group of public for the purpose of establishing a relationship built on understanding, interest, as well as support. So that definition really does a good job of kind of hitting the who, what, where, how, why, when of public relations. Public relations usually involves this sort of plan. It's a strategy where specific plans and tactics are in coordination with some sort of marketing strategy designed to alter or reinforce a couple different things. First and foremost, public relations personnel are very interested in targeting consumer perception. So what does the what is the common public opinion of this product or of this particular athlete? And then taking that one step further, what are the attitudes and beliefs? Is it a positive perception or is it a negative perception? And they also are very interested in understanding the level of awareness of the product of the athlete. So how much does an individual truly know about Nike's latest shoe that's coming out? Or are they unaware non-users that have no clue that Nike has recently introduced some sort of amazing new revolutionary shoe to the market? The purpose of public relations is to earn public understanding and public acceptance. So there's a goal behind it to understand, again, consumer perception, attitudes, as well as level of awareness. And so public relations really is kind of this combination of managing appropriate media relations in addition to community relations. And so that combined effort between media and community can be summed up and appropriately termed as public relations. Anyone in public relations, a PR specialist, will usually be able to identify the special skills that you see here on this slide. So building relationships, communicating, talking about a public relations plan, making a pitch, managing the story, establishing talking points, as well as managing crisis are all very, very key. And let's kind of start over at the top and work our way down. So when we talk about building relationships, this truly is the cornerstone of a successful career in public and media relations. This is kind of the idea that an individual has the ability to forge and maintain good working relationships with the press. Even if a reporter or a media outlet has done maybe a negative story or is someone very difficult to deal with, a PR professional has to seek to manage working relationships to try and keep the lines of communication open. So that's very, very important. So someone that's going to be in public relations, you have to be able to speak with people and to maintain relationships on a working level. So that makes sense that the next bullet point then is communication. Obviously, one of the most important skills is effective communication in public relations. So we're talking about both internally and externally. Information needs to be directed clearly, concisely, timely, and in an efficient way. And so the PR person will learn to produce materials that contain necessary information, but in a very clear and succinct way. And sometimes that's not always the easiest thing to do, especially if there's maybe a mishap with the product or an athlete really goes off the deep end and there's a lot of information that needs to be clarified. So not only is building good relationships important, but the communication and being able to keep it simple but clear is sometimes a challenge. In regards to creating the public relations plan, a lot of times PR individuals really have to deal with large-scale public relationships product, and so therefore it's important that someone that works in PR is able to prioritize and create a plan that will spell out a strategy to promote the product's message or whatever the theme is for the particular product at that point in time. And so this really requires that it's a detailed chronological outline of how the objective of the campaign will be achieved over time. And so there's a lot that goes into that, right? You think about everything that it takes to understand how to create a chronological outline, steps 1, 2, and 3 that have to happen before steps 4, 5, and 6. So in order to do that, we have to have an individual that's able to see the bigger picture. They have to understand timelines, deadlines, things like reaching certain outlets at the appropriate time. So it can be very complicated. The next special skill that a PR individual will have then is understanding how to have this balanced and strategic approach. So when we're talking about daily and weekly media requests, a lot of times the goals and the media targets of the PR plan needs to be attended to by the PR professional to have this kind of balanced, again, and strategic approach. After a PR individual creates this plan and kind of identifies the storyline that happens to be the priority, then PR professionals need to be really proactive and actually make the pitch. They need to know who they're pitching to, and that kind of goes back to our concepts with the market segmentation. You're going to need to make sure that you deliver the right message to the right population. So is it going to the right reporters? Is it going to the right publication or media outlet? Do you know the deadlines, and are you being considerate of the time that's required by that media outlet or a reporter to actually cover the story adequately? Once that pitch has been made, then the responsibility then lies in managing the story. So another really important skill in media relation is the ability to manage the story while it's actually being completed. The routine story and placements usually really don't require more than a basic interview coordination, maybe even a post-interview, that requires some skill in organizing that. But the actual art of managing a story is a practice that's generally reserved for in-depth pieces or pieces that are being submitted to major outlets. So it's really important that the tone or the spirit of the story itself is established, and the dialogue is continued with the reporter as they conduct any sort of interview, collects their facts, and that tone is kind of carried out through the length of either the interview or the story itself. So if you're an individual that's able to stay involved through the story process, it gives the PR person also an opportunity to correct any inaccuracies, and to kind of redirect with appropriate suggestions or emphasizing key points so that the management of the story and the tone of the story after it's been pitched remains consistent. The next skill is having some sort of media training as well as some talking points. So being an effective spokesperson and feeling comfortable dealing with the media are invaluable skills. You guys are future healthcare professionals, and so you've already practiced about how to take assessments, how to talk someone comfortably through a skin fold assessment, which we know not a lot of people are really jazzed about having to do. We know that we have to be people person, and PR individuals have to be the same way. Helping athletes, helping executives kind of be comfortable and prepare for this opportunity to speak to a reporter or speak to a media outlet is going to be something that possible if you're in PR that it will be crucial for your job. So not only are you going to be preparing athletes or maybe other individuals within the company or the product to provide this information or provide this pitch or to participate in an interview, you might need to provide them with some sort of training, instruction, suggestions for improvement in speaking to people, any sort of useful techniques that will help other individuals be successful in any sort of media session. And then another part of a special skill for someone in PR would be to be obviously managing times of crisis. You have all heard of stories of athletes or coaches or CEOs of sport products that have fallen out of grace. And so we understand that not all public relations is positive. And unfortunately, negative media stories are becoming more and more common. And so managing bad press really kind of becomes this special skill. And obviously, the response required really depends on the nature as well as maybe the scope of the issues involved with that negative story or crisis. Typically, the first step in this type of reaction situation is coming up with a plan for making an immediate public response. A quick, effective response can really help minimize damage, and ideally, it can decrease the shelf life of the story. The goal in all crisis or damage control situations is to really keep things under control. Social media and the ability for media to report quickly on the internet has really made that hard to do because the reporting cycle has become so immediate. So PR professionals need to recognize the intensity of the media's desire for a response, but they shouldn't release any sort of official statements until they really are ready with an appropriate, well thought out and planned strategic response. All right, so what we're going to do right now is we're going to focus on the first portion of the public relations formula, which is addressing media relations. So what are media relations? How can they be handled, and what's important? What are some important components related to working with the media? So when we talk about media relations, we can understand that public opinion can be one of the most powerful influences in society. So media relations is designed to formulate and shape favorable opinion through mass media. So when we think of media relations, typically it's communicating with the news media, whether it's verbally or maybe through any sort of other vehicles, in order to kind of balance public opinion with business strategy. So depending on its role within the organization, media relations can take a couple of different approaches. So we're going to touch upon the reactive approach, the proactive, or the interactive approach to media relations. Keep in mind, sorry, better move my microphone down. Keep in mind, media relations is designed to formulate and shape favorable opinion through mass media. So this is usually communicating with the news media verbally or through some sort of other vehicle. And so there's different ways to do it. The PR person will be approached, or they will be the ones that actually approach the organization. So that's why we have these different definitions here for reactive, proactive, and interactive media relations. Those involved in a reactive media relation situation are the ones that respond to inquiries. So these would be questions or maybe requests coming from any sort of media outlets. In the sports world, it could be a request for an interview, request for an appearance, maybe for a photo, a biography of a certain player, things of that nature. In proactive media relations, the point of initiation is the organization rather than the external entity itself. So PR professionals will contact media outlets with possible story pitches, future ideas, things of that nature. Although media relations will always have reactive functions, the primary activity should be proactive in nature. It should be to take the initiative in providing information and creating publicity to enhance the perception of the entity itself. Interactive media relations involves developing mutually beneficial relationships with the media and assisting the media on a variety of issues. So I think that kind of lays out very nicely for you the differences. And again, a good PR individual will work to be more proactive in nature as well as interactive to kind of stave off any negative inquiries that might come their way. So when we think about public relations in the sport marketing mix, think about things that can highlight the connection between the athletes or the teams or events as well as key sponsors. And so that's a lot of times why interactive media relations can be very successful, is because you're formulating commonalities and that can help in turn build positive relationships as well as positive public perception. And really, guys, think about the sports public relations in our digital age. Technology has changed so much, and it really has changed the way that sports organizations use media to communicate with their public. So now we're going to address the second component of the public relations formula, which is community relations. The aim of community relations is to achieve this corporate public relations objectives that are related to a couple different things. Enhancing understanding by the public of the product or maybe the athlete or the team, as well as gaining public approval and acceptance, which ultimately, which is the goal, is to lead to public support. So again, community relations is to enhance understanding, to gain approval, to have public support. And there are three distinct types of community relations that we're going to jump into right now. We're going to talk about the different forms of community relationships that are initiated by players, by the team itself or the institutions, and those that are initiated by leagues or maybe their governing bodies, such as the NFL. And actually, I'm going to go back to this slide. Sorry, I skipped ahead before I was ready to do so. Some of the examples in regards to community relationships initiated by players can be important because players tend to be an integral part of community relations initiatives. Almost all community relations programs, as well as charitable programs, have some sort of element of player involvement because the presence of players through sponsorship kind of garners media interest and coverage. And it can also attract an audience of participants and an observer to that charitable organization. Another example of community relations initiated by players is in a situation where maybe a player has been traded to another sports team within the league. For example, we have Ray Allen that played for the Celtics for a very long time. He was traded during the offseason to the Miami Heat in the 2011-2012 NBA season. And in order to kind of keep his image in a positive light with the fans in Boston and to maybe carry that loyalty even with him, even though he was transferring to Miami, he actually wrote a letter to the Celtics fans. And he just said it very simply: for the past 5 years, my family and I took great pride in calling Boston home. We've loved being here. We will cherish these memories forever. Thank you, Boston, for this incredible journey. Ray Allen, number 20. So that was something simple that was initiated by the player in order to keep that fan base, or at least keep a certain amount of respect from the community. In regards to community relations that are initiated by teams or institutions, we think about the idea that a lot of reasons why they do it is for not only the benefit of the community and the programs and the charitable activities, but it also allows the fans to see the organization themselves through sort of this different lens in a way to interact with the athletes and the coaches and the CEOs in more kind of a personal way. In regards to an institution establishing community relations, McDonald's and Coca-Cola both use philanthropy to kind of position themselves as good neighbors and to challenge their employees and other businesses to match their efforts and contribute to selected beneficiaries. And then you have some other examples, actually several of them listed for you in your book, about relationships that are initiated by the leagues or governing bodies. So take some time to read through those in your chapter, and we're going to move on next to discussing sport community relations. And again, when you think back to that public relations formula, media relations plus community relations, which gives us public relations, it's important to kind of note the difference in the longevity of the two components, media versus community relations. Typically, media relations objectives are short-term in nature. So contacting the press, setting up an interview might not be very much time involved in completing that. But community relations, even in sports, those objectives are typically long-term in nature. So what this does then is it successfully humanizes the athletes. It makes them seem like they're just kind of your average, everyday, next-door neighbor that you have the ability to, reach out to, and it could be someone that, like I said, lives next door to you. What it also does in regards to the sport community is kind of enhances opportunities for other marketing initiatives. It also serves as corporate philanthropy, and it also generates this common idea of goodwill towards the sporting organization itself. So you'll hear, I'm sure you've heard lots of examples of organizations giving back to the community, teams being involved in certain days. The NFL has done a lot to contribute to concussion research, to the improvement of the equipment for the game. And so that's kind of one of the ways that they've participated in community relations to, again, have this kind of goodwill feelings towards that particular organization, despite some of the present research that shows the dangers of being in football. So we're going to move on now. We're going to talk about public relations functions. So this is an opportunity to provide information as well as some sort of general communication between the consumers, the shareholders, the suppliers, the competitors, maybe even government agencies, as well as the public. And these function to really shape and enhance the image of the organization, product, or athlete themselves. And so it encompasses community relations as well as employee relations. It also helps the organization or product or athlete kind of gain political or popular support. It's definitely helping recruit and develop new business later on down the road, which can ultimately lead to new products or innovations or a reinventing of the athlete later on, and so that keeps them relevant, which means money is still coming in. The relationships also help generate some sort of feedback from the public as far as perception and support. And so that also aids in coping with any sort of crisis that may evolve around the organization, the athlete, or the product as well. The final section of Chapter 11 goes into the acceptance of social media. So this is kind of really analyzing sport, television, and entertainment and its impact on sport public relations. And as you think back to the past 10 years and how technology has really evolved, there's really become this shift in media that covers sports more as entertainment and has this high entertainment value. And that's proven in the fact that Monday Night Football is a prime time television spot during the week. You see networks like ESPN and other networks that have popped up that are devoted solely to sports. I'm sure several of you can think of sports media personalities like Howard Cosell or even Dickie V, who's been around forever for especially the March Madness basketball games as they just ended. But we see this fact that numerous media outlets, even non-sport media outlets, provide public relations professionals with an opportunity to promote athletes, to welcome them on their guests as shows, even coaches and full teams, teams that get to visit the White House after they've won championships or the Super Bowl. So sports has kind of evolved from not just being about sports anymore. It's evolved into this whole entertainment status because of the shift in technology. And with this increase in media attention comes almost a greater demand, as well as any sort of overdeveloped maybe scrutiny or criticism, possibly even controversy that surrounds sports figures. And so what this means is public relations is crucial, is key nowadays. So we know that these professionals play a significant role in providing strategic counsel to organizations or athletes to make sure that they're able to navigate such a diverse media landscape, especially with so many different social media outlets that are out there right now. And the reason being, ladies and gentlemen, is that the ultimate goal for the sports PR professional is to balance this opportunity. Media opportunities can be good if they're proactive about it, but also balance being able to avoid any sort of potential pitfalls that intense scrutiny and media coverage can garner in the digital age. You have some labs associated with this chapter that really weighs out the positives and benefits of athletes using social media to promote themselves and their work in sports. Some of your labs even go as far as to interview high school athletes and high school coaches. You know, should high school athletes be on social media, taunting, not taunting themselves, maybe touting themselves? What does that mean as far as prospects later on in college? We've heard horror stories of athletes that were getting ready to be signed at major institutions and colleges and universities across the United States. But something came out on social media, and the coaches found out a bit about it, and their scholarships were revoked, and they were done being recruited. So public relations in sports, whether it's for high school students, collegiate athletes, or even professional athletes, again, the goal is to balance the opportunity of social media with any sort of intense scrutiny that comes and that can come from putting yourself out there on a daily basis in social media. And at this point, ladies and gentlemen, by the end of the chapter, which we are at, hopefully you have a better understanding for public relations and its role in positioning and the formulation of this sort of marketing mix. Hopefully you have a better recognition of the importance of effective community relationships programming in regards to product positioning and effective marketing efforts, as well as understanding the role and the scope, as well as the influence of media and how media can be used in conjunction with public and community relationships programming to make sure that we're having positive public perception of our products, our athletes, and our teams. And at this point, Chapter 11's lecture on public relations is concluded.